liftoff of the Atlas V Curiosity.
Able to take the telegram down welcome to Airship Book. We're 9 rosters, 8 energies active. Touchdown confirmed.
I'm Dan McLeese. I'm JPL's chief scientist, and on behalf of JPL's leadership team, I'd like to welcome you to our celebration of Curiosity 1 year on Mars. 1 year ago today, believe it or not, began one of the most daring adventures yet in planetary exploration, certainly the most daring of our exploration steps for Mars. The thrill of the Curiosity rover and its science payload hurtling toward the planet to a soft touchdown on 6 wheels remains with us today. And we're reminded just what an incredible science and engineering feat this is. I'm impressed by the work that's been done since those initial moments on the surface with everything worked perfectly. I'm impressed by the work that's been done in the first year of exploration. And the rover's performance has just been, I think, in excess of what the most optimistic of us had imagined it might be. While learning to operate the amazing machine that the rover and science payload are, the engineers and scientists have forged a partnership that includes the rover itself. They've been testing and they've been utilizing thousands of rover and payload functions. And what we have today is an astonishingly powerful tool for science. We've been observing, we've been measuring, we've been sampling, and in the background, throughout laboratories across the globe, there have been scientists working to help interpret the measurements that have been made. I think it's important to recognize that the questions that we ask address some of the most important questions in science, and for Mars, one of the great mysteries, and that is, was this planet ever habitable? Our celebration of the success of Curiosity's first year includes the anticipation of even more exciting years of discovery to come. We have 3 conversations today for you. One is about getting the amazing rover to the surface and making it work, about the science that's been accomplished and that to come, and we conclude with a look at the extraordinary public and worldwide impact that this mission has had. But before getting started, I'd like to quickly acknowledge the past and present leaders of Curiosity. The project managers are Mike Sander, Pete Tysinger, Richard Cook, and Jim Erickson, and project scientists Ed Stolper and John Grotzinger. Gentlemen, please stand. And I'd ask everyone who has been part of this amazing mission to please stand and be acknowledged. Please stand. Those of you who have been part of this mission and worked together with these individuals. So to frame our first conversation, here's a short video that I think helps remind us what it took to get to the surface of Mars and what we've been doing there since.
That great things take many people working together to make them happen is one of the fantastic things of human existence.
Not only have we driven the rover, we've removed its arm, put it all through its paces, but it's been in a thermal vacuum chamber and kept very cold. Parts of it have been in a centrifuge. We've done drop tests, pull tests, drive tests, load tests, stress tests. Just an amazing amount of testing this vehicle has gone through. We've tried every way of operating the vehicle using the software, literally thousands and thousands of hours of software testing. It's been just an amazing several years, really, of constant testing and development, finding problems, fixing those problems, and going on to the next problem.
LC, this is the LD on Channel 1. LC, you have permission to launch.
Am I confident that she's going to go and she's going to be successful? Absolutely. It's going to go and she'll be good.
We should have parachute deploy around Mach 1.7. The parachute is deployed. We are decelerating. P-chill has separated. We're found the ground. Standing by for back shell separation. We are in powered flight. We're at an altitude of 1 kilometer descending. Standing by for sky crane. Sky crane has started. Touchdown confirmed. We're safe on Mars. Trying to see where our curiosity will take us.
What a fantastic demonstration of what our nation and our agency can do. I could only think of the words of Teddy Roosevelt as I was sitting there. It is far better to dare mighty things even though we might fail than to stay in a twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat. And the team brought us victory.
So I'd like to introduce the host of today's first conversation, the man who led the project that put spirit and opportunity on the surface of Mars in 2004, and again delivered the Curiosity rover to Mars in 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Tysinger.
I really wish Dan would stop reminding me how old I am. You know, you look at that video, and I don't know about you, but I've probably seen that video 100 times in the last year, and you still think about how you felt that night, and still in wonderment that it really did what it did. It's an amazing story. So I brought with me three of my cohorts to talk to you a little bit about some of the engineering stories about getting Curiosity to the launch pad and to the planet and in preparation for the surface operations. To my left is Matt Wallace. He was the flight system manager on the mission from beginning to end, which means he probably has the least sleep of anybody on the mission. To his left is Alan Chen. He was an engineer on ADL, and you may remember him at the night of Curiosity's landing as being the voice of EDL. I think he said something like, "We're on Mars, everybody." That was a nice thing to hear. And to the far left is Jessica Samuels. She was the phase lead for surface operations during development and now leads the engineering team, and she'll talk a little bit about operations. So, Matt?
Thanks, Pete. I know this is going to come as a shock to some of you, but on every single memory I have of MSL happens to be of sunshine and roses. There were some tough times there. And so I thought I'd say a couple words about one of those periods. It was kind of late spring of 2011, and we were just a few months away from having to ship the vehicle to the Cape. We had had a pretty good winter. We had just gotten through a difficult rework activity on the vehicle. We had all of our engineering hardware. We had all of our science instruments finally on the vehicle. It was up, it was running, it was working as an integrated system. We got through vibration test of the vehicle, of Curiosity. We took it into the chamber. There was a quick picture in the video of the vehicle in the chamber with the simulated sun shining down on it, and we thought perhaps, the sun, in fact, was shining on the project at that point. But there were clouds on the horizon, unfortunately, and perhaps even some severe tropical storms. And within a month or so, as you can see in this picture, the rover was up on the blocks. It was dead bugged. We had ripped some wheels off. The belly pan was off. We were harnessing out to fix some of the components that needed reliability. It had some reliability issues. We were pulling boxes out because we were worried, electronic boxes. We were worried about some of these boxes having a noise vulnerability that could have ended the mission during the entry, descent, and landing phase that you saw us so successfully go through a year ago today. So there were some significant issues. We were also pulling off our sampling system, which has been doing such tremendous work on the surface of Mars over the last year. And so it was a tense time. And some of us, Pete and I, were trying to figure out where we were going to find enough time in the schedule to put this thing back together, retest it, get it down to the Cape, get the spacecraft restacked and onto the launch vehicle. And I remember thinking to myself, why are we struggling here? Why is this so hard? Did we try to do this to ourselves? And after a little bit of time thinking in hindsight, in fact, that is exactly what we did. We did intend to do that to ourselves. And the reason was, from the first day I started working on this project, we designed this system, we architected it to be robust, to be reliable in flight, for it to have the ability to take a punch from Mars and stay on its feet. And we saw that a year ago when we landed. We went right down the middle, and we had a very successful landing. And we've been watching that on the surface of Mars, I think. This is a vehicle that likes to be on its way or on the surface of Mars. And the corollary to that, of course, is that it makes it, you may have to build some very difficult things. You may have to design and build some very difficult things. And fortunately, we had a very strong and resilient team to do that. And that was that period of time really called on that team to do everything they could to get through that rebuild cycle, as you can see here, get the vehicle back together and get it down to the Cape. And eventually, in the next image, you can see the spacecraft fully assembled, ready for encapsulation inside the launch vehicle. It was, the project brought all kinds of challenges, absolutely, but the story ends well, as you all know. And I want to once again just thank the team here and at the various centers out in industry, our international partners, everybody that really made this possible. So, thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Matt. Of course, that was only one of the many stories and challenges that happened to Curiosity on the way to Florida. I can remember talking with Matt and Dave Rule, the head of ATLO, and talking about including rework periods in the ATLO schedule, because we knew we were going to have problem failure reports. We knew that some of those were going to require hardware changes, and we thought we would pre-schedule some of that thing. And so we put the we put a rework period in the ATLO schedule, and the incident that Matt talked about was number 3 of the one ATLO rework period that we had. I want to echo Matt's congratulations to the team that not only worked on the design of Curiosity, but also the ATLO team, that in so many of our missions save our behinds because of the ability to compress schedules at the very end. And also to the Kennedy team, who in preparation of the fairing, which had to be cleaned for planetary protection purposes, and also in the last integration of the vehicle, did a fantastic job, so that we launched, in fact, on the second geometrical opportunity, and it was a very successful launch. And that got us into cruise, and of course, you might think that would have been an easy time, but it was not really. We had flight software to do, because we had delayed flight software development. We had a few cruise things to worry about. We had We had a computer issue early on that we solved with the help of our BAE partner. And then we got to EDL, and Alan will talk a little bit about that.
Since it's been a year since landing, I figured it would be a good time to make a bit of a public confession. As Pete mentioned, I had the honor of doing the play-by-play on the way down. I kind of gave myself two guidelines. One was to try not to say anything stupid, and the second was to try to report what I saw and report everything I saw. And it's actually that second one, which I didn't do. It turns out, if you're taking you back to that night a year ago, we were watching telemetry coming in from the vehicle, and we had two types. We had these tones one of these 256 notes that Curiosity would send back to us to tell us what was going on. And that's all we had for about 14, 15 minutes from around cruise stage separation until we got into the atmosphere. And then after that, we started picking up data from Odyssey. It's those tones that, things were looking pretty good for a long time. We had 10 minutes of pretty boring heartbeat tones. I was like, my blood pressure was up, but let's just calm it down a little bit. Then shortly after we hit the atmosphere, we got a tone called Meade's Beta Catastrophic. Usually bad when you get these tones that come back saying catastrophic. We had intended that tone to tell us that we were about to imminently lose the vehicle. It was based on, you had to do a lot of processing because you couldn't send back raw telemetry in these tones. And, that really spiked my blood pressure. I think I almost had a heart attack when I saw that. What that meant was, if it was true, was that the vehicle was either tumbling or not heat shield forward toward the atmosphere. It's using the sensors, actually, you can see them on the heat shield there, these pressure sensors, to try to figure out what the attitude of the vehicle was. So I bet if you watch, I haven't gone back and rewatched the video, I can't stand watching myself, but I bet if you go back and watch it, you could probably see me seize up. I'm a terrible poker player, and that was definitely a heart-stopping moment for me. And I thought about it for a second. I figured, if about to lose the vehicle, I better not say anything dumb there. Back to guideline 1. I was like, this just happened right after we hit the atmosphere. There really shouldn't be much air at that point. Do I really believe this? Is there something going on here that's more than I was thinking about? Because it's using it's trying to basically subtract off the pressures from two different sides of the heat shield to figure out what the attitude is. But really, there's not much air up there. Are we getting much pressure at all? What's going on? So I figured, let me sit on this one for a minute. If we're about to lose the vehicle, if we're about to hit peak deceleration and peak heating, it's going to become pretty obvious if we're going to lose the vehicle in a minute or two. So I sat on it, and luckily everything else turned out okay. It turns out actually that the instrument is working fine, but we just had a calibration error, and that was going about it. If I wasn't already sweating a lot then I was super sweating after that. Definitely had the heart pounding. So, but as I like to say, EDL is really just the middle of the story, or even closer to the beginning. Really, it's what's happened afterward that's kind of been the most rewarding for me.
Thanks, Alan. I'm glad you didn't tell me.
I didn't want to kill anybody too on that.
And given all the VIPs that were there that night, I'm glad you exercised a measure of restraint. And for all that work, for the 7 years to get to that point in time, for all the risk reduction that had happened, all the risk reduction during design and during assembly, and the fact of launch, which has its own issues, and cruise, and EDL, and we're finally on the surface. And you need to realize at that point in your book that you're reading, you've just passed the prologue, okay? Because we do all that work so that the surface science and the surface operations take place. And Jessica will talk a little bit about that.
So we've really been having an exciting time on the surface in this past year. We've sent over 15,000 commands to the rover so far, with an average of 600 to 800 commands a day, which is pretty impressive. And our 5 samples that we've scooped, and 2 drill rock targets where we delivered those samples to our analytical instruments. And we're approaching 2 kilometers, or about 1 3/4 kilometers. And the countless number of science papers that the science team has been able to draft and present has really been a testament to how much we've been able to exercise the capabilities, all the capabilities of this vehicle. So we've been having a great time on the surface. But kind of keeping in line with these challenges, probably our biggest challenge arose about halfway into the year. We had just finished our first drill sample at the John Klein Science Target and had delivered some of those samples to the science instruments. But on one of the afternoons when we received the data, we saw that we actually weren't getting data products from the spacecraft. And that's one of the main ways that we get the telemetry from what's happening on the rover. And it was kind of convoluted with rain in Spain at the DSN, and so it was a little hard to make out what was going on with the data. But we have a second overflight from the Odyssey orbiter, and that data also showed us that the rover hadn't gone to sleep in between the two times from the MRO pass and this Odyssey pass. So that got people worried, and the conclusion was that the spacecraft really wasn't operating how we were expecting it to, and it wasn't performing its nominal functions. So after a very long day and night, and commanding into the middle of the night, and we were no longer on Mars time, so everybody had already been there a long day. The team concluded that the most important thing was to get it back into the configuration that we know, which is to swap the computers from the A-side computer over to the B-side computer. And all this was happening, and Surface being this mission of science discovery and being led by whatever is in front of you. I don't know if the team was just nostalgic for a deadline because launch happened and cruise happened, or EDL happened, and we had solar conjunction happening within a month from when this event occurred, which meant we weren't going to be able to command or really hear from the spacecraft for about 3 weeks over the month of April. So here we were in March. The team pulled together. We had members, past team members and current team members really coming together, stepping up and doing all kinds of different jobs. Everybody kind of broke out into investigating the hardware side of what was going on and the software side. And the ops process was even revamped to figure out how to challenge or how to adapt to the anomaly at hand. And just seeing the team come together like that, I think, was just a testament to the integrity and the commitment that we all have on these types of missions, where you come back and you put forward what you bring, what you know, and really pitch in wherever you can. And I think being able to experience that and seeing all the faces kind of bring their piece to the table was pretty exciting to go through that kind of harrowing time where we were against a clock. So we recovered in a couple weeks, got science back up and running. We modified the flight software to be more robust. So going into that conjunction period, we were prepared. Should a problem like this happen again on the other computer that we were operating on. But aside from that one, kind of scary moment there, the surface operation has just been fantastic in terms of what we're learning and just all the different suite of capabilities that this rover has. That's first time ever on Mars stuff that we're doing. So it's been pretty fun.
Thank you, Jessica. I hadn't known it was a stormy night when that happened. Those of us that lived through the Sol 18 anomaly may have, deja vu all over again with that whole story. So that's only one part of, as an old television program used to say, there are 8 million stories in the naked city, and there's certainly 8 million stories in terms of getting Curiosity to where it is in today. And I think that people would be disappointed if I didn't point out that for all this wonderful congratulations and for all this wonderful feeling and for this celebration, the fact is we're halfway through the mission. We have not yet met that final level 1 requirements. But I think the science panel will be up next, and we'll talk about what we have accomplished and where we're going. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Matt, Alan, and Jessica. In order to set up our discussion of some of the scientific achievements that we've seen thus far in the mission, let's use some pictures to remind us of what's happened.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, Mr. President. I just wanted to call and say congratulations to the entire Mars Science Laboratory team. What you accomplished embodies the American spirit, and your passion and your commitment is making a difference. You guys have done an outstanding job. You made us all proud. Curiosity is going to be telling us things that we did not know before and laying the groundwork for an even more audacious undertaking in the future, and that's the human mission to the Red Planet.
To recap here, we have a set of go, no-go criteria. We want to make sure that the vehicle is healthy and safe. I will give everybody a heads up about 15 minutes in advance of when we're expecting data.
Images are coming down, and everything looks good, really. Okay, we're getting image data.
Congratulations, everybody. It looks like we've got some nice new images to look at on the surface, and great job.
Please help me welcome the project scientist for the Mars Science Laboratory, the man who leads an amazing team of science across our planet. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. John Grotzinger.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here on behalf of our 468 science team members that work on the Curiosity mission, and I'd like to start by thanking our colleagues in engineering that have made this all possible. It really has been spectacular what you all have accomplished, so thank you for that. I'm joined today by my colleagues on the mission, Ken Edgett, who is the principal investigator of the Molly instrument and a lifelong Mars scientist, and Bethany Ellman, another colleague on the mission, who works as one of our tactical leads, called a Science Operation Working Group chair, that commands the rover and adjudicates between all the different people that would like to do science each day and coming up with a final list of what needs to be done. And Ashwin Vasavada, who is an atmospheric scientist and the deputy project scientist, along with Joy Crisp. And Ashwin does tactical work as well as strategic work, and I think we widely appreciate him for pretty much running the mission. And he does a terrific job. I want to take you back to the drill hole that really has made history for this mission. And it's shared as a major engineering accomplishment. It wasn't 7 minutes, it took 7 months. And this was something that the team worked incredibly hard at. And we approached this prospect with great anticipation because before we landed, the science team made a map. And with that map, when we landed, we decided to do something that completely baffled the media, which was to drive in the opposite direction that we had told everybody we were going to be driving in. We're supposed to be driving towards this mountain, and now the science team is headed off in the opposite direction. We had a few people to explain that to and rationalize. But the reason for that is that the team had done their homework. And with all the incredible work that came down from Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the HiRISE camera, the CRISN hyperspectral camera, we were able to come up with a very highly evolved understanding of what our options were. So that when we landed, we decided to execute one that took us on this path eventually down into a place called Yellowknife Bay, where we drilled this hole. And when we drilled into it, we realized the scent was getting warmer and warmer. And then as we got down in there, we drilled it, we looked at it, and Mars changed from red to gray. And that told us that the iron was reduced, which is something that's very important for microbial metabolism. And basically what we got out of that was an understanding of a habitable environment, which is not just, yet again, another discovery of water, but characterizing that water and the rocks and the minerals that were there to tell us that if simple microorganisms, so simple that they don't need sunlight, they need only chemical energy, they use rocks and minerals sort of like batteries, and there's a transfer of electrons as the microorganism interacts with these chemical substances that are there. And what we were able to do with the payload, this was a truly integrated set of observations. Every instrument was involved in this. The REMS instrument, which is our atmospheric experiment, actually has a ground temperature sensor, so that when we crossed over this boundary that you had seen with Themis data from Orbiter, from Odyssey, that predicted we would cross over in a high thermal inertia terrain, when we crossed over that boundary within 1 sol, the ground temperature sensor on REMS told us we were in the right terrain. The remote sensing package, the ChemCam instrument, worked perfectly to tell us that suddenly there were sulfates there where we had seen none before. And then after that, as we went down, even the RAD instrument, which measures the background radiation for astronauts to do future exploration, it made a measurement. It all added up to understanding this environment as being chemically one that was favorable for life, not in a harsh way, but actually quite a benign environment that's very much like Earth. So we have this new understanding now. That's what we found. And I want to turn it over to my colleague Ken now, who can take you back a little bit to talk about his experience and early observations of Gale and what it's like to be the principal investigator on the mission.
That's a whole lot of stuff, John. First of all, what it's like to be a principal investigator. I'm just one of the team. There's over 400 people on this team. Each one of us represents about 100 plus of them just by sitting here. We love them all, and we work with them very carefully and closely. None of us do this by ourselves. This is a group effort, and I am always learning new things from the people I work with, the people here that I've worked with. It's a very overwhelming experience. But what we have found is so stunning, because if you asked me a year ago, what are you going to find in the first year? I wouldn't have ever said we're going to find what we went looking for. We don't know Mars that well. We still don't know Mars that well, so I'm really still very surprised. Long ago, if you think of a Martian day as like a 24-hour clock, and right now this moment is just some teeny fraction microsecond before midnight of the next day. The rocks we're looking at and exploring in Gale are back somewhere around in the 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. time frame of Mars's history. So it's a very long time ago. Mars was a different place. At that time, there were larger craters forming on Mars more frequently than now, and there were volcanoes erupting, and all of those things produce sediment. And the atmosphere was thicker, and wind transports sediment. And then we now think and know from all the missions over the last 15 years that there was water. There's still water. It's frozen now, but there was liquid water. The water not only transports sediment, it also causes rock to break down and disintegrate into other types of minerals and chemistries, which precipitate out as other minerals. And we're finding those minerals in Gale. Gale's a hole in the ground. Sediments from this early time with all this stuff going on piled up in Gale, just like on many other craters on Mars. There are craters the size of Gale and bigger that are still buried, and we don't even know the crater exists. Gale, though, by some magical erosional process, has somewhat exhumed itself and left behind this remnant, this mountain that's 3 miles or 5 kilometers high of layered sedimentary rock. We went there thinking that every layer is a page in a history book. And we can go there and see not only are there habitable environments recorded in there, but how do the environments change over time? As you go up the mountain, you will see the time getting closer and closer to now. And still a long time ago, but it will get younger and younger. So it's stunning. I don't remember what else you asked me to talk about.
So we could all go on for a long time.
Yeah.
So you had been looking at Gale for 10 years.
14.
14.
Yeah.
And then we wound up there.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
I had the incredible privilege 14 years ago of being able to select targets for the camera on Mars Global Surveyor. And Gale was one of the places that we stumbled on as, holy cow, look at this. There are these layered sediments, and then this story I just told evolved. To actually land in one of the pictures you helped take 14 years ago, and then the camera that you're now responsible for gets down and right up to the rocks like that, and sees those rocks up that close after being 300-400 kilometers up. It's just, ugh. It's the 21st century, people.
Awesome. So Bethany, tell us about what it's like in the day of a rover. 468 people all want to go left. Some want to go right. How do you wade through this process? What kind of decisions? And what's it like to operate the most complex vehicle that's ever landed on another planet?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a lot of fun to operate the most complex vehicle that's ever landed on another planet. So it's an enormous privilege to, be a part of the team, but also to be sort of in taking on this role in a day-to-day sense that really is kind of the nexus between science and engineering and getting these to work together. So working with the engineers to implement the science desires in the best possible way, utilizing the energy, the data downlink capacity, and all of those other things that limit what we can do any given day. How do we get the best science done? But what's really interesting about this is before we can get to the question in the process of implementing the plan for how to get the best science done, we kind of have to come to agreement as a team as to, well, what is the science that we should be doing anyway? So part of this whole process of operation is getting 400 and something science folks marching in the same direction, or at least the same general direction. And that's a process that folks lead both strategically and tactically. So I remember kind of along the, I don't know, maybe it's around the 100th sol on Mars or so, maybe a little bit before that. There was a big push with John and Ashwin and Joy and the members of the Project Science Group. It was like, okay, we have this amazing stratigraphy, these layers of rocks before us. What is our strategy? Like, what do we want to accomplish? We all agreed that this is like cool, but what is it we want to do? Well, and it was even more profound than that. Some people were saying these are lake sediments. Other people were saying these are fluvially transported, down from the rim of the crater, deposited chaotically. Or maybe it's volcanic sediments. Or maybe it's airfall, sort of an ash deposit. Okay, so each of us scientists comes in with our set of hypotheses about how Mars works, how these rock units relate to how Mars works. So then it's a process of figuring out, okay, well, how do we sit down and test these ideas? And that's really one of the amazing things about working on the science team, is that even if we disagree completely about how a particular rock unit is formed, we can still come to a consensus on, okay, well, how is it we test out how these particular rock units form? And if we sit down and we have it out, during the beginning of the mission, it was every day. We'd have science discussions about what we're thinking about, how we're interpreting this different unit. But what was interesting is that even if we disagreed scientifically about how something came to be, we could agree that that place on Mars is important, and that is the place that we need to investigate. And so it all came down from these strategic decisions for where we need to go, and then day to day, sticking on the plan, keeping in mind what is important to reach these high-level objectives to explore this particular rock unit, then this one, retaining the sequence of events in your head as you plan each day on Mars.
Is there one moment that sticks out in your mind, a science discovery that was the one you'll never forget?
Sort of my absolute favorite, my favorite set of pictures that came down from the rover was when so we had been working our way down the stratigraphy into the Yellowknife Bay sediments that you mentioned, where we saw the picture of the drill hole. And for me, before the drill, what was most amazing is it was after one of our drives heading down the depression into Yellowknife Bay. when the NavCam images came down that day onto the computers, onto the software systems that all of us use to operate the rovers, those pictures had these little funny nodules or concretions. And then you could see these light veins heading through the rock. And it was like, oh, this just got real interesting in terms of the habitability story, in terms of the water on Mars story. So that definitely was one of my favorite days and favorite images.
Great. So speaking of water, Ashwin, as atmospheric scientists, you've got all these geologists and geochemists that are, always wanting to drill and sample and do all that. But the atmosphere is a really important part of it. We're trying to get at the very ancient atmosphere. We had this discovery of a conglomerate. We see this evidence for flowing water. And some people might say, well, we've found evidence for flowing water from the surface of Mars, but it's important to confirm it from the surface. What goes through your mind now, wondering, because it's not like we see some giant gusher where it might have catastrophically flowed out from Mars. This seems like the climate might have been different then. What were you thinking when you saw that image?
Yeah. Well, as Ken said, Mars is an extremely different planet today than it was in the past. That's one of the reasons we go there so often. We have this idea that Mars was a warmer, wetter place, may have been more friendly to life, and may have had an extremely different environment back then. One that was able to support liquid water flowing on the surface. Of course, we'd seen pictures for decades of Mars with these catastrophic flood channels and river systems, but never had we seen firm evidence of it up close with our own eyes. And about a year and a half ago, I was out in back of JPL where there's an arroyo and filming an outreach video about why we selected Gale as a landing site. And walking around back there, and it was springtime, and water was coming down the San Gabriel Mountains and forming a little stream through the arroyo and carrying debris down from the mountains. And the stream was full of little pebbles, rounded as they made their way down the mountains, and sand with them. And we're just sort of, looking around. And I told the cameraman as we were filming this video, if we ever found something like this on Mars, it would be a home run. And like Ken, I think all of us were. We'd say those things, but in our heart of hearts, we knew it was a long shot. It wasn't like we took it for granted. And then you fast forward to landing a year ago, and as the rover's landing, its rocket engines are scouring away the gravel. And the next morning, we get these pictures from Mars, and we look in the scour mark, and what do you know? It's bedrock, a conglomerate. A rock made up of rounded pebbles and sand cemented together. Even before Curiosity landed, she had already hit this home run for us and revealed this ancient Mars to us that we were hoping to find. So we drove, literally, through a stream bed on Mars that flowed ankle deep, a few billion years ago. That's just, I'm getting goosebumps just telling you about it. So for me, my interest is in the atmosphere, but really of the past climate of Mars. And we knew that even if we never found life with this mission, we would have this incredible secondary ability with this rover to explore a beautiful site that Ken helped find, and that would tell us about this ancient environment of Mars. That's just, we're just archaeologists sort of trying to piece that together with this rover.
So how is this going to feed into the MAVEN mission?
Yeah, what's exciting is that we're here on the ground, sort of getting this ground truth of what the atmosphere and climate would have been like billions of years ago. And it fits into this general theory that we have about Mars' atmosphere, that it's lost over time. And one of the primary reasons we think it was lost is Mars' magnetic field went away and made Mars' atmosphere vulnerable to being stripped away by the solar wind, by the sun. And so we're sort of we're painting together the story from the ground up of how that may have happened. MAVEN, an orbiter, will arrive at Mars, I think, next year, and begin studying the atmosphere from the top down, watching in real time as the sun continues to erode away the atmosphere. And together, the two missions will help understand early Mars.
Great. Thanks, guys. So, that gives us a view of how Curiosity's mission will pass on to the next mission. And I'll just finish up with a few words about what Curiosity will do now. I think the part of this, as you've heard, all of us, we have these hopes. You don't know that you're really going to find this stuff. And I think the most extraordinary thing really is that we found it all so quickly. And that decision to drive 500 meters in the opposite direction obviously paid off very well. And we haven't even gotten towards our prime goal yet. We selected Gale out of the 4 finalists for one simple reason. It was a unanimous decision to pick the Gale site because it's so diverse. So by driving now to Mount Sharp, we will return to our initial objective, which is to explore these foothills that you can see here that are the size. Think about driving around the lab here. You've got buildings that are sort of 1 to 3 to 5 stories tall with narrow corridors between them. That's this terrain that you're looking at there. That'll be what it's like as we get into that terrain. It's going to be, we think, visually quite beautiful. But those layers that you see there, we know from orbit, from the CRISM data, that they have clays. We know that there's hematite. We know that there's sulfate. So we hope to be able to sample a number of what could be different habitable environments and maybe revisit some old friends that we've seen from previous missions, things like that. So we're all really excited to carry on with the mission. We have a long drive. We think that it could take, if we stop to smell the roses a little bit, it could take till the end of the nominal mission. And we know that NASA is going to back us, and so we have confidence that we'll continue on with this great exploration mission. And thanks to everybody for supporting us.
Well, thank you, John, Ken, Bethany, and Ashwin. You know, the public excitement and involvement in this mission is something that's really touched us all. And we have a video now that will remind us of some of the events which show how deeply involved the public has been.
Kick it. This big, huge parachute that we've got, it'll only slow us down to about 200 miles an hour. But we've got to cut it off and then come down in rockets. They're never going to make it. What happened to them?
Nation, it is a proud day for America. Our flags are flying, and we're singing that verse of the national anthem with all the curse words in it. Because at 1:30 a.m. America Standard Time, NASA's Curiosity rover touched down on the surface of Mars. Woo! We Marsed it! Woo!
Space nerds and gamers, the space agency has teamed up with Microsoft to create a Mars Rover Landing Connect game for the Xbox 360.
More than proud to honor NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory as this year's Webby and People's Voice winner for overall social presence.
We're NASA and we know it. We're NASA and we know it.
If you want to know whether curiosity is part of the culture of the world, I think that pretty much sums it up. The answer is, you bet. You know, more people have been involved in the stories of Curiosity than in any mission that we've sent to a planet yet. And one of the people who has played such a critical role in getting out to the world the stories of Curiosity is the manager of news and social media for JPL. Please welcome Veronica McGregor.
I have to start off, well, first of all, let me introduce the rest of my panel up here, because we're going to have a lot of fun talking about social media and memes and everything else. I have Babak Ferdowsi. Of course, he was flight director on landing night. Adam Stelzner, the phase lead for entry, descent, and landing. And Anita Sengupta, the parachute systems engineer for Curiosity. So we're going to have a little conversation about social media, but I want to start out by saying that this entire campaign to make this mission ingrained in the public and in popular culture, and to engage the public and bring them into this mission, has been an incredible effort across the laboratory. And it's not just my group doing news and social media, but the outreach team, public engagement, the visualization experts, the videographers and editors, and working in conjunction with people like these and all of you out there, because you know that for a few years before we even landed, we were knocking on your doors and asking you to help us get that word out to the public, and you all volunteered your time either doing talks or doing chats online, being interviewed for our videos, and that made all the difference in the world. It made this a success. So let's talk a little bit about we started out, we did Curiosity Cam, for those who didn't know. We had a camera up in the gallery while the rover was being built, and we had about 4.5 million views of that camera by the time that we shipped out to KSC. And we did a public chat every single day that we had that camera up there, every working day at least. And then I would say the next big hit for the public to get even a bigger group involved in the mission was 7 Minutes of Terror. Adam, Anita, you two were in 7 Minutes of Terror. What did you think about the impact that video had?
It had a major impact, and I think it had an impact on school children especially. So I have a lot of educators who are my friends who ended up showing that video to their school children. It made them all want to be engineers and scientists and are incredibly interested in Mars exploration. So.
Yeah, I was surprised. I can remember when John was putting the video together, and I didn't have any sense that it would end up hitting a nerve like it did. And forever, people are just always mentioning the 7 Minutes of Terror. In fact, people were tweeting, "Thanks for the terror." Hashtag thanks for terror. So that's been phenomenal.
Yeah, and it taught all of us a lot as well. And I have even heard people here at JPL saying they weren't afraid until they saw the video. Because all of a sudden you saw it all there, every little movement that the rover had to take to avoid catastrophe. It was really exciting. Now, the next thing that we did to engage the public in this mission was tweet-ups or NASA socials. We did one at launch, and we did one at landing. We had invited members of the public to come in here at JPL and also at other NASA centers across the country for an opportunity to interact directly with the mission team members and to get a tour and go see the Mars yard and go see the mission control areas. It was really exciting. And you two also spoke at that. Did you sense also there that that was making a difference?
Oh, the tweet-up itself? Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, I mean, the outpouring of support we got from the public via Twitter, I mean, it's immediate. It happens within a few seconds of every single tweet that goes out. But I've had wonderful experiences interacting with people from around the country and actually around the world because of Twitter. And so I've been able to interact with a lot of school children, a lot of teachers, a lot of universities as a result of Twitter. So it was a really major impact.
And you, again, you were the parachute systems engineer lead on this, and we have a picture of you doing one of your tests out there in the field. And I can imagine also that MRO picture that was taken just after, or taken during landing and released just after, must have had a huge impact on you, just seeing that, for all of you, in fact, to see that picture come down that night. But back during the tweet-up, I remember there was a gentleman who asked you a question, and that kind of set a lot of things into motion. Explain what happened.
Oh, he had asked, how can we get more girls involved in engineering and science, and specifically his daughter. He wanted to know how that we can do that. And so, as a result, a lot of people kind of picked up on that, and there were certain people actually in St. Louis, Missouri, who picked up on that, who then had a whole bunch of events that they scheduled to support Mars exploration and Curiosity as a result of that. So, and now in my spare time, I actually do a lot of educational outreach, specifically talking about how to get more science and women and girls involved in engineering.
We're showing a picture right now of some of the women you've spoken to. Do you remember what this group was?
This was in Boston. So I went out to Boston, which is where I went and did my undergraduate degree. So I went and met with all of the engineering students at Boston University, and specifically the female engineering students at Boston University. I had an opportunity to go out to the Museum of Science and talk about curiosity. And I do a lot of stuff in the local LA area as well, specifically talking about how to get more girls involved in science and engineering.
Yeah, something we really need.
Yes.
Adam, what about you? At the Tweet Up, I remember you announced you were starting your Twitter account.
That's right.
That
It was
day.
my first tweet was at the Tweet Up. Tricia, my wife, strongly recommended that I get a Twitter account before I go to the Tweet Up. I did. And that was Friday, and by the following Monday, I had 8,000 followers. Of course, nothing compares
We're going to get to Bobak.
to the followers that some of us have picked up. But I was kind of amazed. You know, it's actually a very interesting communication format. The restriction of the 140 characters is a little bit like a haiku or something. You sort of condense it into a small amount of stuff. And it's been very fun for me to interact with a sort of a wide variety of folks around the nation, and actually the world, all via this small little portal. It's fun.
So since then, tell me a little bit more about your role getting word out since landing. I know you've actually done a lot.
I've been talking a bit. You know, as you see, some faces sort of, there's a big, it's, you know, the lottery bowl where they've got a whole bunch of numbers and a couple of the ping pong balls with the numbers come rolling out. Well, some of the faces come rolling out of the random, you know, societal interest bin, and all of a sudden you're exposed to a lot of folks. A lot of people are looking to you for input about what this means for society, and it's been very stimulating, sometimes a bit exhausting, but very moving for me to see how curiosity has impacted our society.
Let's talk about you, Bobak. You were the internet's choice, I would say, and if we had voted a person most likely to become a meme before landing, we might have selected you, only we were a little bit used to your hairstyle. But I went back and, you know, pictures of you in mission control were on the internet and circulating a couple of hours before we'd even landed. Did you notice anything going on? Was your phone going crazy?
I got a few texts from friends saying, hey, there's like this article about your hair on the web. But I don't think I really fully understood what was going on until the following morning. I got to point out one correction, though. I was not flight director on landing night. Keith, come over there. That gentleman. Keith, I don't know if you mind standing up and maybe reenacting your celebration from landing night. Keith did a great job of controlling the room that night and making sure that we had adequate time to go to the bathroom. Yeah. Also getting our jobs done. Yeah. But no, so I just, you know, it was the next morning when I woke up and I, you know, did the morning routine of checking my email and everything else, and realized my Gmail just had thousands of messages because I had never turned off the feature where Twitter says, hey, you have a new follower. Because I had like 50 followers before, you know, or maybe like 100 followers before the night of landing. Little did I realize what was going on in my sleep.
And what was really interesting about that, though, is the doors that opened for you now to become an ambassador for the mission, and to go out and talk to a lot of different groups, be invited to a lot of different events like the National Science Fair, where you're doing a lot of work now, really encouraging and supporting students to get involved in engineering and science. Tell us about some of the great events you've done.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible experience, and I think one of the amazing things for me is just kind of showing kids and people that you can look ridiculous and still be an engineer. Or a scientist. And so this is a picture of me. This is McKinley. It's actually a local school here in Pasadena, but it was just a kind of incredible experience. They had built this whole Lego model of missions to Mars and everything, and it's really cool to see it. And they have their own little Curiosity like rover they can drive around and things like that. It's been such a wonderful experience going out there, talking to kids, seeing the excitement they have. And I think kids are all like really naturally super excited, but they just don't have something to latch onto always. So it's been just awesome for me to feel like I can actually contribute that. And every once in a while, some parent will like tweet me or send me a picture of their kid with a mohawk, or tell me that their kid wants to get a mohawk. And I'm like, yes, I did it. I hope I'm not a bad influence, guys. I'm trying. Yeah.
Do you all feel that this public interest and involvement is still as strong today as it was back on landing night?
I'm kind of amazed at the staying power. I can remember I worked on MER, and I can remember that we were top on CNN's, things going on list for about 36 hours. And then Britney Spears got out of a limousine wearing an unusual set of clothing or not wearing an unusual set of clothing. And all of a sudden, we were no longer on the top things to track. And I've wondered about that a bit. Maybe that came out wrong. But that I think it really is social media. Nightly news has 4 or 5 things they're going to tell you. And if you're number 6, you didn't happen. And so I'm constantly amazed that we are out there still sticking. I'm still having people tweet me and follow me and show up when I talk. I think that there's a lot of interest out there, and I think social media's had a lot to do with it.
I agree. Well, since we are talking about social media, we did put out the question on Twitter a few days ago asking people to send us some questions, because if we're going to talk about social media, we might as well do it, right? Very quickly, Spaz Monkey asks, I know Dr. Astra, which is Anita's handle on Twitter, is doing ISS research, or you're working on something that'll be going to the ISS soon, and they ask what is everyone else up to? So really fast, tell us what you're doing now.
So I'm a project manager for a payload that we're delivering to the International Space Station called the Cold Atom Laboratory, and it's going to demonstrate laser cooling in space and form an ultra-cold quantum gas. Oh, and then let me just say that, so Spouse Monkey I met via Twitter, and so last time I was in Houston, we actually met up in the flesh and had pizza and beer together.
That's great. Adam?
I'm doing a variety of trying to help out with EDL-related stuff and thinking about how we might collect samples for eventual return to Earth in our next expedition to the surface of Mars.
Right. Babak?
I'm very fortunate I get to work with a group of people who operate this rover on Mars, and the science team and everybody has been great about keeping us in the loop and learning all the science. I don't think I had a real appreciation of everything that was going to happen on this mission until we actually went and they started explaining it to us, and it's been an amazing experience just learning actual science.
Let's see. At Pokerface 36025S, or Chris Sheldon Taylor, he asks, what is each person's favorite picture sent back to Earth and why?
Well, mine's obvious. It's the parachute from landing night. That means it worked. So that was a relief.
Mine is the very first image, the rear HAZ cam image that we took back while we still had the Odyssey link. The first image of a new place on Mars.
I agree that picture is amazing, and that was a picture like that from Pathfinder was some of the reasons why I worked here today. I think my favorite picture is actually the zoom mass cam image of the foothills of Mount Sharp, and just seeing the incredible analogy in my head of that looks like the Grand Canyon, that looks like a place that I could see here on Earth, and that makes it so much more kind of interesting to me, I guess. Now I can start seeing, why it's so exciting that we're there.
And you'll probably be able to answer this one as well. It is, what has been the most challenging of Mars Curiosity's assignments during its first year on Mars, and since you're still working on the team?
I guess Jessica's story earlier of the challenge around Sol 200 of our computer anomaly was probably one of the more exciting and scary things. But, we've been fortunate that we've been able to do a lot of homework and getting ready for all the other things. Like the first drill was a tremendous effort from the whole team. And obviously a lot of effort went into and work went into that. But I would say that the biggest challenge has probably been recovering from that. There's some folks right over there who are a big part of that.
All right. So we've talked about social media definitely has had this huge impact with getting our word out, and not just getting our word out to the public, but to get them back in and to get them involved and feel like they can hold these conversations. But Adam, why do you think, what struck the chord? Why did people start following?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been actually asking that a lot of myself. Even prior to landing, I was asking this question of why we do what we're doing and why it might be important for us. Earlier in the videos, you saw an image of Times Square at 1:30 in the morning on Monday with thousands of people waiting to land, waiting to see if we could successfully land. And although we go there for the science questions, I don't think they were there at 1:30 in the morning because they're dying to know about the pH and salinity of the ancient aqueous environment on the surface of Mars. They're there maybe for that, but for more. I think when we explore, we're kind of asking questions about ourselves as individuals and as a society and as a people. Neil Armstrong, I think, hinted at that with the words that he chose to say when he was going to set foot on the surface of the moon, which was one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. What he was hinting at was that he was carrying us with him in that exploration. I think Curiosity carries us with her when she's on the surface of Mars. And so she helps us ask questions about who we are, how grand we are. What questions might we dare ask and hope to be able to answer? So I think one of the reasons that this sticks is because this act of exploration is sort of important to us. I think through it, we dream a little bigger, maybe aspire a little higher, and in some sense, we're a little better, a teeny, eensy bit better. So the idea that 50 or 100 million people in this country are a little bit better by the acts that the people in this room put our shoulders to make happen is it's a tremendous honor for me, and I know it's that for you guys too.
All right, well said. We're going to close our panel because what else can you say after that? So we'll send it back to Dan.
Well, thank you, Veronica, Babak, Adam, and Anita. Thank you very much. So as we come to the conclusion of our celebration, I'd just like you to reflect for a moment how fortunate we are to be part of the dawn of Earth's adventures of the solar system and beyond. It's truly incredible what we've seen from Curiosity alone in terms of the development of the marvelous tools that we now use to explore the planets and what we've learned. So I'd just like to thank you for participating in our celebration. I hope that it's given you an opportunity to think about the scope and magnitude of NASA's exceptional team of dreamers, doers, and what they've accomplished so far and what's ahead of us. So on behalf of NASA's and Caltech's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, I'd like to again say thanks for coming. There's really something to be seen here in a little short video we have to close that sort of sends us off looking at where we've been on Mars with Curiosity by viewing Mars through the navigation camera. So, thanks again. The adventure of exploring Mars continues.
Wow.